What does it feel like to be slapped with a 50% tariff by the United States, the world's biggest economy?
Well, Christian, for me, it was a surprise. Not only the value of that tariff, but also how it was announced, the way it was announced. We cannot have as a President Trump forgetting that he was elected to govern the U.S. He was elected not to be the emperor of the world.
President Trump just unleashed a trade war bombshell, putting Brazil in the crosshairs. On Wednesday, Trump sent a blistering letter to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, threatening a devastating 50% tariff on Brazilian goods starting August 1, 2025. Posted on Truth Social, Trump raged that Lula's government is waging a witch hunt against Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, demanding it end now. Brazil's striking back, vowing to match Trump's tariffs and redirect its steel and copper to Europe and Asia, leaving American industry scrambling and consumers facing skyrocketing prices. Smash that like button to crush the YouTube algorithm. Unlike the 21 other nations hit by Trump's tariff letters this month, the U.S. ran a $6.8 billion trade surplus with Brazil last year, exporting more than it imported. Top American exports to Brazil in 2024 included aircraft, fuels, and industrial machinery per U.S. Census Bureau data. A 50% Brazilian counter-tariff could crush these sectors, jacking up costs for American consumers. Brazil's goods have faced a baseline 10% tariff since Trump's April reciprocal tariff announcement, now extended to August 1st after a 90-day negotiation period. President Lula didn't flinch, declaring on X, Brazil won't kneel to foreign emperors. He promised swift retaliation under Brazil's economic reciprocity law, threatening 25% tariffs on American goods like electronics, vehicles, and appliances. Brazil's also redirecting its $30 billion steel and copper export market to EU and Asian buyers at pre-tariff prices, outmaneuvering American suppliers. This isn't just a trade clash, it's a global shakeup, leaving U.S. markets reeling. If you're shocked, hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. In a CNN interview, Lula blasted Trump's tactics, saying he's not the world's emperor and can't interfere in Brazil's independent judiciary. Bolsonaro, Trump's close ally, faces trial for allegedly plotting a coup in 2022 with a potential 40-year sentence. Lula stressed that Brazil's courts are autonomous and Bolsonaro's fate isn't up for trade talks. Trump doubled down, posting a letter on Truth Social calling Bolsonaro a victim of an unjust system and vowing to monitor the trial closely. The stakes are massive. The U.S. imported $25 billion in goods from Brazil in 2024, including 15% of its steel and 10% of its copper. A 50% tariff could spike prices for American cars, construction, and electronics. Brazil's response is seismic. In May 2025, its non-U.S. exports surged 7.5% to 42 billion reais, with steel exports to Germany up 43% and copper to China up 39%. This pivot is sidelining American industries, leaving consumers facing higher costs. Trump's letter to Lula offered an out: no tariffs if Brazil manufactures in the United States. He's made similar offers to 21 other nations, including the Philippines and Sri Lanka, with tariff rates as high as 30%. Brazil's 50% rate matches April's threat, while the Philippines faced a higher 20%. Trump claims a letter means a deal, but negotiations have stalled, with few countries sealing agreements. Brazil's strategic shift is shaking global markets. In Brussels, EU negotiators secured Brazilian steel contracts, bracing for American price spikes. China and Japan followed, locking in copper at pre-tariff rates. This embeds Brazil deeper into global supply chains, marginalizing U.S. producers. Energy markets are rattled too. Steel and copper production are power-intensive, and Brazil's hydroelectric grid gives it a cost advantage, potentially cutting American Midwest oil demand as production shifts south. On Wednesday, Trump escalated, announcing a 50% tariff on copper imports, citing national security. Copper is critical for our Department of Defense, he posted on Truth Social. This 50% tariff will rebuild America's copper industry. The U.S. imports 50% of its copper, with Brazil supplying 10%. Copper prices soared 13.5% on Tuesday to $5.78 per pound, a record high, before dipping 2.7% Wednesday. Analysts are skeptical. America's copper shortage won't vanish overnight, said Carla Menz, a commodity strategist at Goldman Sachs. A 50% tariff inflates costs for U.S. manufacturers and consumers, making wiring and batteries pricier. Brazil's redirecting 20% of its copper exports to Asia, with China boosting orders by 44% in June. American industries, reliant on Brazilian copper, face disruptions with costs passed to shoppers. Markets took a hit. On Wednesday, the S&P 500 dropped 1.1%, its worst day in 6 weeks. Shares of American manufacturers like General Motors and Boeing fell 4.3% and 3.9%, respectively, as tariff fears grew. The Dow slid 490 points, or 1.4%, and the Nasdaq dipped 1.2%. Asian markets opened flat, bracing for volatility. Brazil's Bovespa index rose 0.9%, fueled by its export pivot. Brazil's not just fighting tariffs, it's rewriting the trade playbook. From Sao Paulo's steel mills to Minas Gerais copper refineries, Brasília is investing 1.6 billion reais in manufacturing upgrades. Small businesses, from Paraná steel fabricators to Bahia's copper processors, are tapping Mercosur and BRICS agreements to break into EU and Asian markets. This diversification signals Brazil's defiance of American tariff pressure, strengthening its leverage in trade talks. Share your thoughts below and hit like to keep up with this trade war drama. Trump's tariff chaos just hit your grocery cart, and American shoppers are reeling. On Monday, the U.S. slammed a 17% tariff on Mexican tomato imports, shattering a nearly 3-decade-old trade agreement and sending shockwaves through supermarkets and restaurants. Mexico's striking back, redirecting its tomato exports to Europe at pre-tariff prices, leaving American businesses scrambling and consumers facing skyrocketing grocery bills. Small restaurants could collapse, and your pizza might cost a fortune. Smash that like button to dominate the YouTube algorithm. The 17% tariff replaces the tomato suspension agreement, in place since 1996, which set a floor for tomato imports. The Commerce Department withdrew in April, claiming it failed to protect American growers from cheap Mexican tomatoes. Field-grown tomatoes cost American shoppers about $1.7 per pound in May 2025, per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Experts predict consumer tomato prices could rise 10%, with demand dropping 5% due to tariffs. The United States, Mexico's top tomato market, could see imports plummet, spiking prices at grocery stores and pizza parlors. Mexico's not backing down. Producers are pivoting to Europe, where Germany and France boosted Mexican tomato orders by 32% in June 2025. This shift leverages Mexico's trade agreements like the EU-Mexico Global Agreement, outmaneuvering American growers. Restaurants like Villa Roma in California, owned by Teresa Razzo, face a dire future. 3 months, and we're bankrupt, Razzo told CNN, as tomatoes are crucial for her marinara sauces and salads. If you're stunned, hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. The tariff fallout is brutal. The U.S. imported $2 billion in Mexican tomatoes in 2024, per the U.S. Department of Agriculture. A 17% tariff could add 20 cents per pound to tomato prices, hitting consumers at supermarkets and restaurants. Small businesses like Razzo's are desperate, with some trying to source American tomatoes, but supply chains can't shift fast enough. Meanwhile, big players like Heinz and DiGiorno dodge the tariffs, using California-grown tomatoes for ketchup and pizza sauces. Trump's tariffs are part of a chaotic trade policy shaking global markets. American growers, backed by the Florida Tomato Exchange, cheer the tariffs, claiming Mexican dumping of cheap tomatoes hurts U.S. farmers. Robert Genther, the group's vice president, told CNN the agreement failed American producers for 3 decades. But Mexican grower Walberto Solorio, president of the Baja California Agricultural Council, disputes this, saying minor violations don't justify scrapping the deal. It's political, not logical, he told CNN, noting Mexico's compliance with price and quality audits. Mexico's pivot is rewriting trade flows. In June 2025, Mexico's non-U.S. tomato exports surged 8.5% to $1.6 billion, with Europe snapping up 42% more tomatoes. This shift is fueled by Mexico's efficient logistics and sunny climate, giving it a cost edge. American restaurants face a tough choice: absorb higher costs or raise menu prices, risking fewer customers. Razzo, who needs tomatoes for her 2 Southern California restaurants, said diners might cut back from 3 weekly visits to 1 if prices rise. Markets felt the heat. On Monday, the S&P 500 dipped 0.8%, its worst day in 5 weeks. Shares of restaurant chains like Darden and Yum Brands fell 3.6% and 3.3%, respectively, as tariff costs loomed. The Dow slid 410 points, or 1.1%, and the Nasdaq dipped 0.9%. European markets rose 0.5%, betting on Mexico's tomato pivot. Mexico's strategy goes beyond tomatoes. From Sinaloa's farms to Jalisco's packing plants, Mexico's investing $600 million in agricultural upgrades to boost exports. Small growers are tapping trade agreements to break into EU markets, reducing reliance on the U.S. This diversification signals Mexico's defiance of Trump's tariffs, strengthening its leverage in trade talks. American consumers could face 10 to 15% price hikes on tomatoes by fall, hitting everything from salads to salsas. Share your thoughts below and hit like to keep up with this trade war drama.